Before salt was something you shook onto fries, it helped build empires, create roads, and decide who survived winter. For most of human history, salt was not a seasoning. It was one of the most powerful resources on Earth. Salt is woven into the chemistry of life itself. Every nerve signal, every heartbeat depends on sodium moving in and out of our cells. Unlike other minerals, the human body cannot make or store sodium for long. Without a steady supply, confusion and muscle failure set in within days. Ancient medical texts warned that salt loss was a death sentence, a truth confirmed by modern science. If sodium intake drops below half a gram a day, the brain can seize and the heart can stop. But survival was only the beginning. Before refrigeration, salt offered the only reliable way to preserve food. By drawing water out of meat and fish, salt blocks the growth of bacteria and mold. This simple trick, packing food in salt or soaking it in brine, meant the difference between feast and famine. Dried cod salted by Norse fishermen could last a year. Pork bellies buried in salt in Roman cellars kept soldiers fed on winter campaigns. Even vegetables survived the dark months as pickles and sauerkraut, their shelf life extended by briny fermentation. For early humans, finding salt was as urgent as finding water or shelter. Natural brine springs, rock salt outcrops, and coastal flats became magnets for settlement. Entire communities grew up around these sources, their survival tied to the mineral's steady flow. The power to preserve food shaped migration, trade, and the very boundaries of the possible. In a world where one bad season could mean starvation, salt was more than a flavor, it was insurance against oblivion. Long before the first road was paved, the search for salt carved invisible trails across the land. Herds of red deer, wild boar, and ancient cattle pressed their way through forests and grasslands, drawn by the promise of mineral-rich springs. Over generations, their hooves wore narrow corridors into the earth, creating paths that early humans soon learned to follow. Archaeologists at sites like Solnitsata on the lower Provadia River in Bulgaria have uncovered layers of compacted soil and phosphate-enriched sediments beneath the settlement, silent witnesses to centuries of animal traffic before the first huts appeared. At Solnitsata, the landscape itself became the blueprint for a new kind of community. The brine springs that attracted wild herds also offered a steady supply of salt water. By 5500 BC, settlers began boiling this brine in ceramic vessels, building domed kilns that could process up to 25 kilograms of salt in a single load. The town's population, around 300 people, lived within thick stone walls, some 3 meters high, guarding both the salt and the knowledge to extract it. These were not simple camps, but a fortified center with 2-story houses, ritual pits, and even gold ornaments buried in the earth. Solnitsata's salt output quickly surpassed local needs. Kilns ran day and night, turning brine into solid bricks that could be traded far beyond the valley. The old animal trails became human corridors, linking the salt town to distant markets across the Balkans and the Black Sea coast. What began as a survival instinct following the scent of salt became the foundation for infrastructure, commerce, and the first stirrings of urban life. Stone roads radiated from Rome like veins, but none was more vital than the Via Salaria. This ancient route stretched from the salt marshes near Ostia on the Tyrrhenian Sea, cutting through the Sabine hills and reaching the distant Adriatic coast. Along its length, salt moved in bulk, in barrels, sacks, and solid blocks, feeding the city's markets and the far-flung camps of the Roman legions. At key junctions like Reate and Amiternum, archaeologists have uncovered warehouses and legal tablets referencing the storage and distribution of salt, evidence of a coordinated supply chain that underpinned the empire's military campaigns. For the Roman soldier, salt was more than a seasoning. The daily ration included butellatum, a hard wheat biscuit, and laridum, salt-cured pork fatback. These were staples that could survive weeks of marching and winter sieges. Salt's ability to preserve food meant that armies could move farther and faster, untethered from the uncertainty of local harvests. The logistics of empire rested on this mineral. quietly shaping the fate of campaigns and the boundaries of Roman power. Language, too, bears the imprint of salt. The word salary traces back to the Latin salarium, a term that appears in legal texts and imperial records. Some scholars argue that it began as a stipend for soldiers to purchase salt, while others see it as a metaphor that later became detached from the mineral itself. The debate endures, but the connection is clear. In Rome, salt was not just a commodity, but a measure of value, woven into the very fabric of daily life and the language of reward. Across the burning sands of the Sahara, salt became more than a preservative. It became the desert's true currency. In the medieval towns of Tagaza and Taudeni, miners hacked pale slabs from ancient salt beds, each rectangular block weighing as much as 40 kilograms. These slabs, stacked high on camelbacks, formed caravans that snaked for 800 kilometers across a landscape where water was scarcer than gold. Arabic travelers like Ibn Battuta described the spectacle, hundreds of camels moving in single file, each animal carrying nothing but salt, destined for the markets of Timbuktu and beyond. At the southern edge of the desert, the exchange took place in silence and dust. Salt was traded, slab for slab, with gold dust measured in tiny scales or folded into strips of cloth. The value could be staggering. A single block of salt might buy its weight in gold. This trade did not just enrich merchants, it filled the coffers of the Mali and Songhai empires, funding armies, palaces, and the legendary libraries of Timbuktu. The wealth of West Africa flowed along these salt routes, proof that a mineral drawn from the bones of the earth could rival the allure of gold itself. In imperial China, salt was not just a commodity, it was the backbone of state finance and control. Officials in the Tang Dynasty oversaw a vast system of extraction that reached deep beneath the earth. In Sichuan, workers drilled bamboo tube wells hundreds of meters into buried brine deposits, using iron-tipped tools and a rhythm of human muscle to break through rock. Once the brine reached the surface, it was poured into iron cauldrons and boiled over roaring fires, the vapor rising in thick clouds as salt crystals formed. Every batch was carefully measured, and a portion collected by the state as tax before a single grain could be sold. The government's grip was absolute. Only licensed merchants could move salt, and secret production was a crime punishable by exile or death. Fiscal records from the Tang era show that as much as 80% of imperial revenue could come from salt taxes in certain years, funding armies, canals, and the machinery of rule. Smuggling flourished in the shadows, but the penalties were severe: confiscation, forced labor, even execution. Through the salt monopoly, the state turned a simple mineral into a source of power, binding the fortunes of millions to the flow of brine and the authority of the emperor. Salt's power reached beyond the marketplace and the battlefield. In the world's oldest stories, salt became a symbol of purity, loyalty, and the boundary between sacred and profane. Ancient texts demanded its presence at the altar. In Leviticus, every grain offering is seasoned with salt, a covenant of preservation between the people and their God. Salt's incorruptibility made it a seal for promises, a substance that could not be undone or spoiled. In Genesis, the fate of Lot's wife, transformed into a pillar of salt for looking back at a city doomed to destruction, stands as a warning and a mystery. Her form, frozen in mineral, became an image of judgment and permanence. Far from the deserts of the Bible, Japanese Shinto priests sprinkle salt to purify shrines and ward off evil, a practice that continues today. Sumo wrestlers toss white grains into the ring before each match, an echo of ancient rites that treat salt as a barrier against defilement. Across continents and centuries, salt's presence in ritual and myth reveals a substance trusted not just to preserve flesh, but to guard the spirit. By the mid-1800s, a new era dawned for salt. Engineers in Cheshire, England, unveiled the vacuum pan evaporator in 1858, a machine that could pull pure salt from brine with unmatched efficiency. Solution mining soon followed, pumping water deep underground to dissolve ancient salt beds, then drawing the brine to the surface for industrial-scale extraction. These advances shattered the old economics of scarcity. The price of salt, once measured in gold, tumbled as production soared. By the 20th century, annual global output climbed into the hundreds of millions of tons, most of it no longer flavored food or preserved meat. Instead, nearly 80% fueled industry, including chemical plants, water softeners, road de-icing, and plastics. Table salt became a minor byproduct. Public health officials seized the moment, launching iodization campaigns in the 1920s to fight goiter and thyroid disease. By adding trace iodine to everyday salt, they transformed a humble mineral into a tool for mass prevention, saving millions from deficiency in a single generation. Salt built empires, shaped faith, and dictated survival, long before it faded into kitchen routine. Today, its true power hides in plain sight, yet every cell still depends on it. When the ordinary becomes invisible, we risk forgetting what truly sustains us. What else have we overlooked?